3 topics that people would like to discuss, and so.
Will they show up? Will they show up to discuss them?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. They wanted to,
It's always a good. It's always a good.
yeah. So, a couple things in this. There might be one more thing.
I still think, and I don't mean to say it, I remember practical and some of the historical. The city doesn't have to take this. In the school district, the regional church is a bit different.
That's like superintendent.
I think it'd be a good topic. Really,
Isn't that against the law? Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. First, move on to the approval of the minutes of the meeting held January 13th and January 20th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's see.
This to the first different topics.
Okay, so we will move on to the persons wishing to address the school board on non-agenda items. For these, we have two different topics. We have Tony Martinet on one, and then we have three that are on a separate issue. We'll start with Tony Martinet. Would you please state your name and address?
Tony Martinet, 5000 South Nevada Avenue, apartment 103 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Good evening, school board members. I am here on behalf of the Sioux Falls Education Association. As you may know, 2 weeks ago, we heard that things in South Dakota are looking better than originally projected financially, so the state should be able to find some money for education. However, this is not good enough. Funding for education is about keeping a promise to our students. The education of our students should never be an afterthought or something funded if revenues are slightly better than expected. Education should be a priority no matter what. That is the promise made to our students. The state needs to keep the promise that our students will have the best public education possible. When the state does not keep up with funding, then it forces districts to make tough choices between providing quality educators who are paid as such, or between providing quality programs that are fully funded and supported. This is not a decision school districts should be forced to make simply because the promise from the state is not being honored. To the Sioux Falls School Board and to the Sioux Falls School District leadership, I say thank you. Thank you for your efforts to ensure that we are providing the best possible education for our students. The Sioux Falls Education Association appreciates that the Sioux Falls School District has always worked hard to be fair and respectful of everyone when making tough financial choices. Choices that are required to compensate for the lack of funding support from the state, because realistically, there is very little that the district can do to replace that lost funding. Sadly, with any choice, the students lose something. Our students are losing quality teachers because of inadequate pay. Our students are losing quality programs because of limited resources. Our students are losing quality education because of overall cuts in the system. All these losses are because the state is not properly funding education. Because of this lack of support from the state, the Sioux Falls Education Association is organizing a walk-in for education next Wednesday, February 5th. The purpose of the event is to demonstrate that education matters to everyone in Sioux Falls. The way the event will work is that anyone choosing to participate at a school will meet 10 to 15 minutes before the start of the educator contract day. Each work site and building will set the exact time and location to meet. Elementary schools and high schools would meet around 7:15 or 7:20. Middle schools would meet between 7:30 and 7:35. We are asking everyone involved to wear red, carrying the theme of Red for Ed we've seen in many other states. There will also be signs that have been made in advance to highlight what our students deserve and may be missing because the promise of a fully funded educational system is not being fulfilled. The plan is that 5 minutes before the contract day starts, participants will start walking towards their school. The intention is that at the start of the contract day, staff is walking into the building together, the signs get put away, and the day starts. Walking in is to demonstrate that we are all in this together, and we are here to show up for our students. I invite members of the school board, district leadership, and the community to consider participating with educational staff at their building. People wishing to participate can register through the SFEA Facebook page or website, and specific details will be emailed out to participants. This event is intended to demonstrate that education matters to everyone in Sioux Falls, and we want the state to honor that and keep their promise to our students by fully funding education in South Dakota.
Thank you, Tony, and we appreciate you organizing this in a way that does not disrupt the day, but yet gets the message out. Thank you. Okay, next one, move on to the next speakers. I'll go in the way you were signed up, and since you're new, you probably haven't been here, so the format is you state your name and your address up there so we have it for the public record, and then we do, you have 5 minutes each to speak, so and we'll have a timer up here, so we'll let you know when your time has expired. under our policy, you cannot state students' names or any staff in the school district, because if this issue ever arises to where something we have to make adjudication on, we need to be like an impartial judge and jury for that. So that's why we ask that. And also we don't want to have any issues brought up that way. So we appreciate that. And if we follow the rules, so we'll start with Kayla Enriquez. Thank you.
Okay, so Kayla Enriquez, and are you asking for physical mailing address?
Your home street address.
Okay, 4918 South Dunlap Court, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 57106. And I'm just here to talk about some things that have been brought to my attention over the last year. I have a niece that attends Edison Middle School, and there has been bullying and fighting going on in the middle school, and I'm sure this is something that's been going on for years and years. It was happening when I was going to school. I do feel that social media is definitely, showed an increase in that. And I'm just here to, one, bring awareness and make sure that that is out there, and also just ask what your take is on the policies for violence and what we can do to try to make some changes at that specific school. I'm sure it's happening at other schools. There is a resource officer on site. I don't know if it's something where we could talk about having maybe 2 or an additional one just over the lunch period. It seems like that's when it's happening the most often. And also, what is the different punishment that's provided to these children that are having this or taking this action of bullying or getting in physical altercations on a reoccurring basis, and how many times does it have to happen before, it's suspended for a longer period of time. And I guess that's my concern. I don't know if we have a conversation now, or if you guys just take note of this and it's brought up later, or.
We just take note, but we appreciate you coming forward and making us aware, and just ask it. I appreciate you want to have a solution. You're just not, and so maybe returning back to Principal Hieronymus, or if you're not getting traction there, Dr. Jamie Knoll, the assistant superintendent with our district, kind of oversees all the building administrations, to work on maybe with the PTA or PTO at Edison to kind of come up with some solutions and some good things. But policy, they could also go over the policies with you, both building and district-wide, what there are for when there is actions too.
Okay, and I know it has been something that's been going on for at least the last 6 months, and we have tried to work some of those things out. I just feel like there's not a lot happening. Mm-hmm. And so I heard about this board meeting within the last few days, so very unprepared, but still wanted to at least be here to be a voice for people that can't make it. So that is something that I'll share with them. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's all I have.
There is also, and I don't know the location specifically, but every year at the beginning of the school year, we provide every student with what's the name of the grid? The behavioral, yes, there's a student matrix that says what offenses are what levels and what happens at each of those levels. I'm sure that's online. I apologize, I can't give you that exact spot, but I'm sure that somebody here could, that you could be able to see one offense or what is an offense and what does that get for, you were asking about suspension, things like that. That's all online too. Or I'm sure if you contacted somebody down here at IPC, they could give you the actual paper copy that we send home with all families too.
So what would be, if we feel that we have been following things that you guys have suggested, what would be a next step that we should be taking at this time?
I would say if you haven't spoken with Jamie or emailed or the principal, if you follow the chain. So the principal would be first, and then after that it would be either the principal and Dr. Knoll. You can reach out to him, and your information's on the website as well. Mm-hmm. So
he's the gentleman sitting at the far end of the table right there too. Just
I know I'm seeing you look this way. And
yeah, sorry.
They weren't responding.
Well, over here, yeah.
Okay.
So that's just the normal chain of command. Yep. And so we don't typically, we thank you for coming, like Cynthia said. We don't typically get directly involved into those types of scenarios. That's really at the building level, and if it needs additional assistance from the building level, then it would go to Dr. Knoll. So
okay,
yep. But thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, next. Thank you, signed up together. So who would ever like to go first between Todd and Tara Hoffman? Or, it's like Todd. Thank you. Please state your name and address as well.
Todd Hoffman, 1900 West 6, apartment 207. I guess I'm on the same topic, and I don't know, can't use kids' names or whatever, but my son was, I pulled him out of school at Edison the week before Christmas break for bullying, harassment. And I talked to Mr. Ronimus, I talked to our teachers at Edison, and, they talked me back into bringing him there, basically told me he wasn't going to be able to get anywhere else. So I brought him back, and within 6 days after that, he was attacked. He was assaulted from behind, like, what would that be, last Tuesday. So I pulled him out of school again. And, I guess, I don't know what's going on at that school, but this is, like I said, it's an ongoing thing. I know students that have been there and have gone on, they went through this for the last year, 2 years, whatever it is. Something's got to be done. My buddy couldn't be here because of work. His son was attacked Friday from behind, sitting in his desk. This is going to stop. This is straight. They're being attacked. My son was hit from behind walking down the hallway. Now I have to miss work for more court dates. I have to miss work to come and get my son from school. My wife, ex-wife, has to miss work. Now there's doctors' fees. This has got to stop. It's getting ridiculous. I don't know what else to say. That's why I'm here. It's out of control. So I don't know. We got to go somewhere above Mr. Hieronymus, Ms. Bloom. I've been there. I've been here to talk to the Patty, whoever, I don't know her last name. I've talked to all kinds of people. Now I got to sign and fill out paperwork to homeschool my son because he's not getting a fair education. He's not kept safe, and he's not the only one. So I need to know, where do I go above that level, or where to take this, because I really am. He's not getting a fair shake at all.
Dr. Jamie Knoll would be the next step in that
Okay.
process, same person that we spoke to Kayla about, and help you with this process. And so, because like I said, we are kind of the final step and kind of like the chain of command. We can't get involved in that. I apologize this is happening to you and your family, and but it would have to go to Dr. Knoll, who's the gentleman with the suit coat on the end of the table there.
So how do I do that?
You bet. If you can't stay till the end of the meeting,
Yeah.
And get his contact in from there. If you go call into the IPC right in the morning, you can get contacted with him, or his email address is also, if you go in the staff directory on the school district website, it's on there too. And it looks like he's walking over with some information for you, so to get that to you. You bet.
Thank you.
Tara? And once again, your name and address, and also, I said it before, I just want to remind, no names or of students or staff, please. Thank you.
Tara Hoffman, 4501 South Tennis Lane, apartment 4,
Sioux Falls. Thank you.
Sioux Falls. And mine's just basically like theirs too. We have contacted the school. We've gotten sometimes no response unless we go into the school. And it seems like for our son, we had to, their thought on it was have him leave early, have him be in the hall by himself. And the second time we put him back into school, it was, well, maybe you can have a friend and come and be in a room for lunch. Well, that's pretty much pulling my son out of where all his other peers are and letting these other people, these other students be in the lunchroom, and my son has to eat outside somewhere else because he's being bullied or attacked. I don't find that fair at all. And basically what they all said, I want my son to feel safe. I want my son to get an education, but I refuse to gamble with him.
Thank you.
Yep.
No one else to address the board tonight? Thank you. And thank you for coming tonight. A move on to the approval of agenda.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion and a second on the approval agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On to the good news report.
Well, good evening. Usually we think of this time of the year, January, as kind of a slow time of the year, but not so in the Sioux Falls School District. This has been a busy month in January, and I wanted to highlight a couple of things that have been happening. So this month, our spring and summer catalog of classes came out for community education. As you know, community education is the arm of the district that reaches into our community to provide educational opportunities for both K-12 students and also lifelong learners of all ages. The catalog consists of nearly 200 unique classes with options for participation at nearly 400 different times between now and the summer months. So for decades, you have graciously supported the fact that school buildings aren't just for between the hours of 8 and 3:30, but they should be used by our community as well. And so this season, we continue to use those facilities well, helping people learn how to can produce, make artisan breads, learn the basics of Excel, and all kinds of different activities that happen through community education. So if you haven't checked out our catalog yet, we invite you to do so. January is also mentoring month, and today we really want to say thank you to all of the mentors who participate in the Sioux Falls School District and come alongside our students to support them in their learning. Today we attended the kickoff to Mayor Paul Tenhagen's Sioux 52 initiative. It's bringing attention to the need for mentors in our community, in our schools, in our businesses, and anywhere really. We're pleased to both have the LSS School-Based Mentor Program in our schools, as well as the newly launched Teammates Mentoring Program. That kickoff was earlier this month, and so again, we just say thank you to all of the people that provide that support to our students. It really does make a difference. I want to briefly highlight something that is coming up for incoming kindergarten students and their parents. The Here Comes Kindergarten event will be held at Pettigrew Elementary in March. And what I really want to do is say the word March, because then my mind thinks warmer weather, right? We will be hearing more about that program coming up at the end of next month at a Good News Report. But I wanted to make mention so that if people are wondering, because this time of year we get a lot of people after the turn of the calendar, people say, well, what do I need to do to get my child ready for kindergarten? So we make that mention now that there is some information on our website. Please go out and find that. That's right on our front page of the website. So we'll hear more about that program upcoming, but just to help out those families who are asking that question right now. Today was the deadline for nominations for the 32nd annual Dr. John W. Harris Sioux Falls Teacher of the Year. As of about 4:40 this afternoon, we had 66 nominations. The deadline was 5 o'clock. So there may have been a couple of other additional nominations that came in since that time. We will vet those nominations and come up with a list for consideration for the judges. And then the event to name the winner is March 9th at the El Riyad Shrine Mosque. I believe Nan Baker is the school board representative who will be participating as a judge in that process. And finally, we want you, and I'm sure you all know that our Boundary Task Force meeting is our second is scheduled for Wednesday night. We are in the very early stages of this months-long process. Again, hoping to have it done by June. See, I can say the word June. Forward thinking into warmer months. In the spirit of community engagement, we encourage anyone who has input to go to our website. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's a flyout, the blue tab that kind of comes out from the side, and you can go ahead and submit a question, comment, concern, suggestion, whatever you have. You can fill that out, submit the information, and it will come to the appropriate person in the district. So we really have been focused on being transparent in this process. It's a lengthy process and one that evokes plenty of emotions, but this gives everyone an opportunity to have their voice heard. We've been getting some good traffic through that Let's Talk portal, and we encourage people to continue to provide input along the way. So those are just a few. Oh, one additional note. We just determined that Night of Hope and Caring which is our event with the Sioux Falls Storm, will be May 2nd. See, I can say another summer month there. May 2nd, a Saturday. And we look forward to working with the partners from the new owners of the Sioux Falls Storm, as well as our ongoing partners at Sioux Falls Federal Credit Union, to help us get that program off the ground and really level the playing field for our schools that do not have PTAs and PTOs. So just a lot of things happening this time of the year that I thought it'd be nice to highlight some of those for you. Any questions?
Thank you. One, the portal with the Let's Talk app, does that only work on computers or does that work with phones?
It does work on the phone as well. It will be on the phone. It will be a small icon on the bottom right-hand side of your screen on the phone that says Let's Talk. So it's not the flyout on your phone. It looks like a little button on the bottom right-hand side. So either at a computer or on your app or however you want to access the district website and that information, it's available to you there.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding the public that Wednesdays are next task
force meeting 5:30 here, and we look forward to those conversations.
I would say too, you can access the website from the school district app. I just tried it, so it does work that way too.
We'll move on to approval of, or the first conflicts of interest. There were no new ones presented to us. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda, items 8A through F. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. On to the supplemental consent agenda, items 9A, 1 through 4, claims to Sanford Health. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries with 2 abstentions from board members Ryder and Mickelson. On to 9B, claims to Avera McKinnon. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries with 1 abstention from board member Parker. Now to the reports to the superintendent.
Okay, thank you. I didn't ask Mr. Veek in advance. Do you want to introduce our
Sure.
auditors?
We have with us tonight Dan Shelsky from RSM. They do our school audit for quite a few years now, and he's here to present the audit report to the school board.
All right, thanks, Todd. Thinking maybe for next year, it'd be nice for us to be included on the good news report. Which will be a change of pace. But, glad to be with you here this evening to talk about the results of the audit for this year ended June 30th, 2019. Should be noted that we did meet with the Budget and Finance Committee to discuss in detail the full financial statements and associated letters. And so for purposes of tonight's meeting, we've kind of summarized that into a presentation for this evening. So I think we'll go ahead and just jump right in. So as it relates to the status of the audit, we are substantially complete, and we would anticipate finalizing the report here shortly after the board meeting, pending approval after tonight. Okay. We start off with looking at the district's financial results. The first slide, when we were able to get that up, would be the summary of the government-wide net position for the school district, which is really an all-encompassing view of the district's activities. It includes both the governmental and business-type activities. And all of those are presented on the full accrual method of accounting. So that would include capitalization of the fixed assets and long-term debts being reported as liabilities, which is a little bit different than what you see on most of your fund financial statements on a month-to-month basis. Looking at the total net position for the district, it decreased this year from $247 million down to $241 million, which is about a $6 million decrease. The main changes there would be that there was an increase in capital assets, net of related debt, of about $5 million. There was also an increase in unrestricted net assets, and that was offset, more than offset, by about a $14 million decrease in restricted net assets, which primarily relates to the district's recording of the SDRS. Thank you, TM. pension plan. So the district is required to record its proportionate share of the SDR's pension plan on the financial statements. And so that's that middle column, if you will, on the far right, at 61 million. That was about a $14 million decrease from last year. Next, we'll move into the fund financial statements, starting off with the general fund. These fund financial statements in the next several slides are on the modified accrual basis of accounting, and those are the ones that you're typically used to seeing where the capital assets are expensed and debt payments are expensed as well as they're made. The general fund is always considered a major fund for audit purposes. And if we look at the fund balance there for the general fund, overall, the district had planned to decrease fund balance by about $1.3 million this year. However, property taxes and investments in deposit earnings were more than budget by about $2.3 million from a revenue perspective. And also expenses were less than budget by $1.4 million. Netted all together, that resulted in an increase in net assets in the general fund of about $2.5 million, leaving $15.6 million in there as of the end of the year. Of that balance, $14.4 million is considered unassigned, which would be about 8.1% of the general fund's 2019 expenditures on an annual basis. Next, we move on to the general fund revenues by source. So it's split into columns for local taxes, state sources, federal grants, and other for the trailing 2 years plus 2019. Total revenues this year in the general fund increased from about $170 million to $173.3 million. So that's about a $3.5 million increase, mainly due to an increase in property tax revenue of $2 million, which is that dark purple column on the left. Looking at general fund expenditures by objects, these columns show the expenditures broken into salaries and benefits, purchase services, supplies, materials, and other. Total expenditures for the general fund increased about $3 million this year to $178 million as of the end of the year, which is about a 2% increase. And that was primarily due to increases in wage adjustments as FTEs were flat, then also about a $2 million increase in hospital and medical insurance costs for the general fund. Next, we have a graphical presentation of the previous two slides for the general fund revenues and expenses, showing the major sources and uses for the general fund. You can see from the revenues on the left, most of the revenues come from local taxes and state sources, which collectively compose about 87% of the general fund's revenues, while from an expenditure standpoint, salaries and benefits consume about 83% of the general fund's resources. Moving on to the special education fund, fund balance, which is also a major governmental fund for accounting purposes. Overall, the fund balance decreased about $450,000 to be just shy of $1.5 million this year, which was fairly close to budget, as the district had planned to use $600,000 of the special education fund balance this year. More details shown on this next slide for the changes in the fund balance of the special education fund, including at the top there a summary of the revenues by source, and then below that the expenditures by object. Total revenues for the special education fund increased from about $41 million to $45 million this year, and that's mainly due to an increase in property tax revenue of about $2 million, and also an increase in federal grants of $2.8 million this year. From an expenditure standpoint, total expenses increased from $44.2 million to $45.7 million this year. And that was mainly due to an increase in the FTEs and wage adjustments, and also there was an increase in tuition costs of about $500,000 for 19. The pie charts for the special education fund show that from a revenue standpoint, local taxes and state aid make up about 83% of the SPED revenues, while salaries and benefits consume about 84% of the SPED resources. Next, we have a summary of the capital outlay and capital project fund balances for the last several years, and those columns are broken into amounts for capital outlay, capital improvement, hail damage project, and also the elementary, middle, and high school project funds. Total fund balance increased this year from about $15 million up to $144 million. Overall, that increase of $128 million is primarily due to the issuance of the general obligation bonds during fiscal year 2019 of $136 million. That's primarily to finance the new middle school and high school and other projects that are part of the district's capital improvement plan. And the increase is because not all of those proceeds had been spent as at the end of the fiscal year. Moving on to the Southeast Technical Education, the Post-Secondary Vocational Fund. This represents all of STI's governmental activities in this fund. It's considered a major fund for audit purposes. And it should be noted, different from some of the other governmental funds, that the capital improvements for STI generally finance this fund as well. From a fund balance perspective, total fund balance decreased about $700,000 to $4.3 million this year. That's about a 14% decrease. Initially, STI had budgeted to break even. However, revenues were about $1.6 million less than budget, primarily in tuition fees and also other local and state sources of revenue. That was partially offset by expenditures being less than budget by about $1 million, mostly due to capital acquisitions. Moving on to the Food Service Fund. This is a major enterprise fund for audit purposes. It's on a full accrual method of accounting. Here's a summary of the revenues, expenses, and net income. From a revenue standpoint, total revenues increased about 2% this year to $12.2 million. Expenses increased $1.3 million to right at $12 million over the previous year. I did want to point out that since this is a full accrual method of accounting, it does record its proportionate share of the SDRS pension liability. And actually last year there was a pension benefit, so that reduced expenses in this fund by about $400,000, and this year it was an actual expense about $400,000, so that's about an $800,000 change from 18 expenses to 19 expenses. So that net of the revenues and expenses resulted in an increase of about $163,000 in net assets for the food service fund, which is shown on the next slide there. And this breaks it down into the amount that's associated with capital assets, restricted for the SDRS pension, or in the unrestricted bucket. At the top there in the yellow. The total SCRS and capital assets, both of those amounts decreased by $300,000 respectively, but that was more than offset by the increase in the unrestricted net assets of $800,000, leaving about $4 million in unrestricted net assets in the food service fund as of the end of the fiscal year. Next, we'll move on to the Group Health Insurance Fund. This is an internal service fund that accounts for the district's self-insurance plans. Revenues include both the employer and employee contributions for insurance premiums. And it should be noted that most of the expenses primarily consist of the payment of medical claims. Looking at 2019, total revenues increased about 11% to $37.4 million, while expenditures increased about 7% to $37.4 million as well, leaving a relatively minor increase in net assets in the health insurance fund of about $67,000 this year. And there's more on the fund balance on the next graph here with the net position does show that the $9.9 million in ending net position in the health insurance fund. If you look at that from an annual perspective, that would be about 27% of the 2019 expenses of $37 million in the group health insurance fund. These last couple of slides are some required communications from us as your auditors. So those are charged with governance, and it does mention that we did, that the district, did adopt 2 new accounting standards this year. However, they didn't materially impact the district's financial statements. There were 2 audit adjustments that were identified this year, one to impact cash and receivables in the general fund and the special education fund, and the other to reduce depreciation and accumulate depreciation in the governmental activities portion of the government-wide financial statements. There were a few uncorrected misstatements that were identified that management has determined were not material, and we agree with them in that regard, and that includes moving certain payroll liabilities and cash balances from the payroll holding fund to the funds in which those expenses were initially incurred in, and also 2 items impacting the revenue and deferred revenue in the general fund, and also receivables and insurance premium in the group health insurance fund. We did not identify any significant unusual transactions during the year, and we've also listed there the summary of the significant accounting estimates that were used to prepare the district's financial statements, including the self-insurance liability, the allowance for doubtful accounts, the other post-employment benefit liability, and the net pension asset liability assumptions that were used. Then lastly is a summary of any related comments or findings that we identified during our review of internal control over financial reporting or our review of compliance with federal work requirements, which is a required part of our audit. It does note that we did not identify any material weaknesses in internal control or financial reporting. We did note one item related to the timing of the review of the accounts receivable reconciliation that was considered a reportable item that's included in the financial statements. We also did not identify any reportable compliance findings, and we separately communicated some control deficiencies that were noted to management in a separate letter. And so with that, that summarizes my prepared comments. I guess I would open up to the board for any questions.
Thank you, Dan. Are there any questions for you?
No. There's a lot of moving parts and it's a large budget, so it's encouraging to know that year over year, you know, then this is my 6th, I think, audit that I've heard, and it always comes back with very little in the findings, maybe a tweak here or there, which I think is normal, and so that's very encouraging, the consistency of the way that we manage the funds in our district. We could be in a better position, but we do very well with the money that we do have. We manage it well and follow the rules and all those things. So thank you for the time that you took to complete the audit and give us the information on the results.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the 2000?
So moved.
Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, the second report tonight is a report of our summer climb program. Here to give that report is Dr. Teresa Boyson.
Good evening. Summer climb, just like Deanne said, it's January, so we're thinking of warmer times. Tonight, our board report on summer climb comes from the summer of 2019, which was our 4th year of summer climb. Summer climb addresses the district priorities, student outcomes, and priority statement 1, that the Sioux Falls School District will provide rigorous and effective engaging curriculum and instruction for all students to emphasize growth and reduce the achievement gap. And then we looked at the initiative and really looking at defining the future of summer climb, so looking at the progress that we've had over the 4 years. Last summer, we had 188 students in kindergarten through 2nd grade at Laura B. Anderson, Hawthorne, and Hayward participate in the 4th year of summer climb. Students were selected based on their reading and math scores as identified with Being a Reader, which is our ELA, our English Language Arts curriculum, and using Advantage Math, our math support intervention program, and then MAP data, their NWA MAP scores. Students identified attended summer climb starting June 3rd through July 25th. They went for 8 weeks and a full day program. Morning was set with reading and math instruction. The afternoon helped support that reading and math through fun activities and community engagement. NWA, we measured that, again, their student progress. We looked at their spring when they left that for the summer, and when they came back in the fall, we measured their growth, and we have that information to share with you on how they did. This first chart here, summer climb reading interventions. So this is looking at how they did. We have kindergarten again. The students who non-attending peers are in yellow, or that first column, and the summer climb students, their growth is measured in that second column. So you can see in kindergarten, our students grew at 1.5 RIT, and that's that measurement that we use with the MAP data. Anything at 0 is expected growth, anything above 0 is growth. And our first graders outperformed their non-attending peers also, not quite as at that higher level, but they still achieved higher. And then when you look at 2nd grade, remember, these are students that moved into 3rd grade, so they finished 2nd grade, and then they don't want to be called a 3rd grader until summer climb's over, because they know when they're a 3rd grader, they don't get to come. And so, and in the fall, they took the the 2 through 5 MAP assessment, which measures more of the comprehension. At K2, the test is read to them. At 3 through 5, it is not read to them. And so it takes it up to that higher level. And so we often see that dip in scores when they move into the 3rd grade. And the next slide here is the math growth that we saw with summer climb. Again, kindergarten outperformed their non-attending peers. They had growth. And 1st grade,
remember zero's that line where that's expected growth. Anything above is above that, and anything below is, there was a little regression, but not as much as their non-attending peers. And then same thing with that, switching over to that 2 through 5 assessment in second grade, the end of second grade, moving into third. In our next set of slides, we'll look at how did our students perform over time, because we have noticed last year when we did the year 3 report that students who attend for multiple years maintain that progress. And so this is multiple years of reporting for reading. That first column there is that RIT growth for students in their first graders. So they attended at kindergarten and first grade. That first column is students that were a first grader that only attended that one summer, last summer. So at a 0.9, students that attended for 2 years was at a 1. And then, of course, we don't have any first graders that have attended for 3 years. But then their non-attending peers was at a 0.47. So the students that attended for 1 and 2 years as first graders outperformed their non-attending peers in reading. And then, again, that next group, those students moved over to the 2-5 test. And we have 1 year in summer climb at a negative 6.7. 2 years in summer climb, a negative 3.5, and then 3 years. And then our non-attending peers was at a negative 0.517. So in that category, their non-attending peers have performed better than the students that attended 3 years as second graders. Math is our next look at multiple years in summer climb. Those, again, in that first column, we have students that attended 1 year at a negative 0.3, students that attended 2 years at a 0.5, so they grew ahead of that, and then the non-attending peers was a negative 1.1. And then you can see that second grade column where our students attending for multiple years, better progress in year 2, so when they attend for 2 years versus 1, 3, 4 of their non-attending peers. So when we look at summer climb, that was the 4th year. During the summer of 2019, 188 students attended, and of those, 25 or 13% of those students returned for a 3rd year in summer program, and 42 students or 22 returned for a 2nd year of the program. A 3rd year was 13 and 2nd year was 22. And that's the growth that we displayed on these 2 charts. And so really looking at summer climb and how do we support that in our buildings. The results that we studied over 4 years indicate students who attend summer climb for 2 years perform slightly ahead of their non-attending peers in the areas of reading and math. And we know summer climb's funded through federal funding, and so really looking at how do we move forward with that with some information that we have on federal funding and that possibly being cut for next year. And so that's our board report and really making some tough decisions with that.
What Dr. Boyson is saying is we don't know if we're going to be able to sustain this program or not. We're going to have to take a good hard look based on what we think the federal budget is going to provide for us for next year. So we'd love to keep this program going. We don't know that we're going to be able to keep this program going. And you don't have to decide tonight.
Well, the two questions I have, Teresa, words. One, when you say non-attending peers, so is that, are they of the same level of reading and math as the students who are in climb, or are they not even eligible to go to climb because they are above their grade math?
Good question. It's a combination of both. We have 75 slots in each building approximately, and then of course, can the parents, does it work for their schedule? Even though we have transportation provided, so they really work with identifying the students with the most need and work up the ladder towards proficiency. And so some of them are at the same level of these students, but the majority are higher.
And then last question, sorry, Nan, I didn't mean to over the cost. Is that over the time frame of the program, or is that a one-time summer cost?
That's
Okay,
one-time summer cost.
That's what I thought, but I
Yes.
wanted to make
So no supplies, materials, because we've had those. So.
Well, there's just such a strong correlation. The data certainly is suggesting that intervention for this math and reading improves students' overall achievement, which is foundational to one of the strategic plans of the district. So to the extent that I would want to support programs that continue to improve student achievement. And so we'll see what the federal government does.
Yes, thank you.
I think the unfortunate thing is that not the value that the students get from it can't only be measured in a test score. And so when I think about the experiences that our students have, yes, they're doing reading and yes, they're doing math, but beyond that, the life experiences that they get, whether it's going to Wildwater West or whether it's going to the Washington Pavilion or Canaries game, things that many times these students otherwise would not have been able to participate. And unfortunately, you can't put a score on that. And so it will be unfortunate if it's not something that we can sustain, because I do feel like it makes an impact on these kids. Yes, academically, but I also believe socially and just experientially, making them aware of different things that they have otherwise not been exposed to. So it's unfortunate you can't measure all of that on a test or in a score. But I think we all know that there are far more benefits socially than maybe even just the academic piece of it. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I just ask that you acknowledge the summer climate report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor of acknowledging the summer climate program report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, our third report this evening is the second quarter report from Mr. Beek. Here to give that report is Mr. Beek.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. We got a pretty good extensive look at our last year's budget, our audit review. So tonight we're just going to take a quick look at how we're doing halfway through the year. On the general fund, on the revenue side, most of that's kind of dictated to us by our child count, or our student count, I should say. Kind of talked about this when we did the first quarter report, but we're about, we had more students than we anticipated, so our state aid formula dollars are going to come in close to $500,000, so get about $480,000. This is the time of year usually we're watching closely, or we used to, the bank franchise tax to see how that comes in, but that just becomes a local need in our state aid formula 2 years down the road. So honestly, we're not, if we come in high, we just get less state aid. 2 years later, if we come in low, we get more state aid. So that isn't as big a deal. So we're kind of to a point where the only other large revenue that we're looking for is our school and public lands dollars, state apportionment is what it's called. And that looks like it's about right on budget where we're going to be. We don't have the exact final number, but based on preliminary figures, that looks like it's going to be close. We did have, as you know, we've kind of had some large donations, but those are nice to have, but kind of like federal dollars, those are fund-specific new items in the budget, so it'll be a net. We get additional programming, but it won't be a net to our bottom line. So the general fund, revenue-wise, is coming in, probably about $500,000 to the good. On the expenditure side, you can see we're halfway through the year, but we're less than 40% of the way through on our expenditure side, because we don't kick in our expenditures till usually September is when they really start going. So we're showing that on this expenditure side, while it's pretty early, it's kind of right on track to where we were last year. We're tracking just slightly behind, but not much. Our rate of spending for last year. So, right now anyway, as we sit today, I'm going to say we're going to be really close to right on the money on the expenditure side in the general fund. In the sped fund, our revenues are our state aid. We kind of know what our figure is when we set the budget back in April. So we're about right on. We're within $1,000 on that number. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. That's a very large part of the budget. So on the revenue side, I'd say we're very close to being right where we thought we were. It's just how we come out. You know, the federal money, we know that as well. It's just kind of how much of that we spend in any given year dictates how much we draw down on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, it's real early. They're you know, less than right around 36% of the budget spent. We are tracking a little bit to the good there. I'm not going to say halfway through our 37% or 36% of the expenditures through that we're going to come in real well, but I'm guessing we are going to come in to the good on the expenditure side, knock on wood, that we don't have any big expenses pop up. So we're tracking fairly well there. I'm going to say it's going to be I'd say $500,000 to $1 million on the positive, and it's a smaller fund, so that's a pretty good amount there. But right now, I'd say special ed fund is tracking positively. The revenue side flat, but on the expenditure side, the positive. In general fund, $500,000 to the positive on the revenue side, and about on target on the expenditure side. But that's a much bigger fund, so there can be a little bit more play in that. So I just ask that you acknowledge the financial report. Thank you.
Any questions?
Move to approve.
Do you have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the second quarter financial report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same, sorry. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Final report of the superintendent tonight is the legislative update. Mr. Leek.
Yeah, it's been a pretty slow session so far. I guess this will be a longer report 2 weeks from now, but I'll try to go through this pretty quickly. So if you guys haven't seen a position yet, or you might have seen it but acted on it, we go through those, and you can just, if it's okay with you, President Mickelson, you can just stop me if you have a question. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. So start with the House bills. House Bill 1031 is it's an act to revise certain provisions regarding school district fiduciary funds. This is just a cleanup with a new GASB requirement. We have no position on it. That bill passed out of committee 14-0. House Bill 1032 is an act to revise the authority of the Board of Education standards to promulgate rules regarding certification. Once again, it's kind of cleanup. We take no position on that. It passed out of committee 12-2. House Bill 1042 will it adjusts it does a 3-year adjustment, and eventually that's going to become a 2-year adjustment on the SPED formula for the allocations we get for the students who are on the severe needs. And then it also makes that Cutler-Gabriel adjustment to balance state aid versus local property taxes, keep that percentage the same. So it would increase the levy by 6.88 cents. We see that as just something they need to do. So we support that bill. House Bill 1043 does the Cutler-Gabriel amendment for the general fund. It also provides for the governor's recommended 0% increase. We know the Cutler-Gabriel amendment adjustment has to take place in the general fund as well. Inflation is supposed to be 2%, so we're not supporting the bill. We're not suggesting a position because there will be other bills coming to try to actually increase state aid. So we're just saying no position on that, kind of out of respect for making the Cutler-Gabriel adjustment. On the Senate bill side, Senate Bill 39 establishes the Jobs for South Dakota's Graduates Donation Fund. We suggest no position. That bill passed out of committee 7-0. Senate Bill 59 protects teaching of certain scientific information. Not a lot of detail on that bill. It's a placeholder, so we're suggesting no position for now. Senate Bill 66 would allow a charter school to apply for sponsorship from any school district or the State Department of Education. If approved, the charter school would receive a pro rata share of all funding received by the school districts in which it resides. It requires all teachers to be fluent in Lakota, Dakota, or Nakota, as acknowledged by the Department of Tribal Relations. We oppose the bill, suggesting opposing the bill. A school district already has the ability to operate a school in accordance with the Ocheti-Saquin Essential Understanding and Standards if they wish. The bill would allow the Department of Education to sponsor charter school within a school district without action of the local school board. We don't think this bill is ahead of its time. It requires a contractual agreement between sponsor and charter school, exempting this charter school from all laws governing the administration and delivery of public or non-public education in the state. However, neither the sponsor nor the charter school has the legal authority to make this exemption. The bill does not exempt the charter school from any state laws, which bring into question the purpose of the bill. So we're suggesting opposition to that bill.
That Senate bill has some odd red things.
Yeah, right. It has not been acted on yet. And then Senate Bill 67 was a bill that would allow sparse school districts to kind of get the greater of the limit. Most of us are living under the 3% or inflation, whichever is less, plus new construction, or $2,800 per student. They could choose which one of those. Currently, those are both limiters, and the other school districts get the lesser of that. We're not necessarily against a bill helping out sparse schools, but there is a comprehensive plan coming forward that kind of all the school lobbying groups have signed on to, so we suggest they wait for that. And this, I think that was talked about today in committee, was deferred to the 41st day. So like I said, it's been light so far, and that's it. So we're just asking you to approve the positions that we brought forward.
Any questions or comments? I move for approval.
Second.
Motion a second. All those in favor of our positions on the legislative update signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 11 on the superintendent search update, just a quick update. We had met and we have reviewed the leadership profile developed through HYA and meeting with community members and the public input on the online, and also desired characteristics for our future superintendent, and we just want to clone document. But basically, there were no surprises. Community engagement was very high on there. We are going to post an executive summary of that leadership profile as well as the desired characteristics for the public to look at. So just giving a little update where we are. Thank you.
Yeah. And those desired characteristics are what the search firm uses when they post the job online and to other publications. So it's just help us find somebody that we need.
Let's see. Do I have a motion to move into executive session per 1-25-2-3?
So moved.
Second.
We move into executive session.